The fire crackled gently against the cool breath of evening as I sat beside the lake that had been part of my family's ranch for 3 generations. The pine trees stood tall behind me, their shadows dancing in rhythm with the flames. Just me, my tent, my old thermos of black coffee, and the stars. No cell reception. No distractions, just the hum of nature and the creak of my father's old dock stretching into the water. I had taken a week off, not from work. I had retired. Years ago, but from the noise, this land was mine now. After Dad passed, the deed fell to me. 50 acres of hills, trees, and this sacred lake. I didn't need a permit to enjoy my own property, so when I heard tires crunching gravel in the dark, I figured it was a curious neighbor. But when red and blue lights began to strobe through the tree line, I stood slowly, heart suddenly thumping. Section 2. HOA on the offensive, sir. This is Officer Blake from Timber Falls Police, a voice called through a megaphone. Step away from the fire. I raised an eyebrow. 2 patrol cars. 3 officers. And right behind them, an SUV that made my stomach turn. Karen, I muttered. Sure enough, out stepped Karen Blevins, president of the Timber Falls HOA, clipboard in hand like it was the Constitution. She looked utterly triumphant. This man is camping illegally on HOA-controlled lakeside, she declared. He's violating Section 12 of the Quiet Use Charter. On my land? I called back, this lake borders common use space, therefore you're in violation. She snapped. Officer Blake looked uncertain. Do you have ID, sir? Do you have a map? I countered. Because I think you're trespassing. Section 3. Proof and Pashbotsky walked to my truck, pulled out the laminated property map and my original deed. This entire perimeter is privately owned. Your so-called HOA line ends a quarter-mile east. Karen turned red. That map is outdated. We reclassified this area last year. You don't reclassify what you don't own. Officer Blake reviewed the papers under his flashlight. His partner whispered something to him. He looked at Karen, then back at me. I think he's right, he said. Karen stomped. He's disturbing the peace. I'm drinking decaf next to a fire. Section 4. The real trespassers. The next morning, I filed a formal trespass notice against Karen and her HOA volunteers. Turns out they had installed signs on my property claiming community access only. L, my cousin and a property attorney, came down from Austin to help me prep for court. They've stepped into a landmine, she said. This isn't about rules. It's about control. We compiled documents, photos, and boundary surveys. Going back 40 years, then came the twist. Section 5. Unmasking the land grab. L dug deeper. HOA board minutes, emails, real estate filings. Turns out, the HOA had knowingly tried to annex private ranch land under the guise of community park expansion. They'd lied on public documents, even received a small grant for public restoration. That's fraud, L whispered. And we had the proof. Section 6. Courtroom. Karen showed up to the hearing like she was walking into a parade. Elle and I sat quietly, watching her confidence deflate as the judge flipped through the documents. This land has been privately deeded for decades, he said. You had no authority to enforce HOA rules here. In fact, you've trespassed. Karen paled. Section 7. Justice delivered. The court fined the HOA for trespassing, false signage, and attempted annexation. Karen was removed from her position. Neighbors, who once whispered behind my back, now sent pies and apologies. But I didn't want apologies. I wanted peace. Section 8. The final campfire. A week later, I returned to the lake. Same tent. Same fire, only this time there were no red and blue lights, no clipboards. It's just stars, trees, and a man who stood his ground. As the fire crackled low, I smiled and whispered to the wind, You came to take what wasn't yours, but now everyone knows it was never yours to begin with. Asterisk. A week after the court ruling, things should have gone back to normal. But they didn't, not completely. Every morning, I'd walk the lake perimeter with Elle. The wind moved through the tall grass, like it was whispering secrets. Secrets the HOA had buried for years. I think we're only scratching the surface, L said one morning, squinting at the far tree line. Karen may have been bold, but she wasn't the only one involved. She was right. Karen had been. A face. A loud one. But someone gave her cover. Section 2. The quiet neighbors in Timber Falls. Silence is louder than noise. After the trial, none of the other board members came to check on Karen. None apologized. They went radio silent. But then, a man named Paul Whitmore, former treasurer of the HOA, called L. I didn't know what they were doing, he said, voice low. But I signed off on budgets I never saw. He threatened me when I asked questions. L asked for copies. Paul delivered a thumb drive. Inside, proof of years of fake budgets, illegal land surveys, and backdoor deals with local officials. Section 3. Land for sale at the county clerk's office. L found 2 parcels marked pending transfer under HOA extensions. Both were on my ranch. And here I thought this was just about a fire pit, I muttered. This was a land grab, L said, and they were preparing to sell your lakefront as community access parcels. Section 4. Setting the record straight. Tell, drafted letters, subpoenas, and formal inquiries. We met with the district attorney. We filed a public land audit. Request by the end of the week, 3 more board members had resigned. Karen, facing charges for document fraud, finally spoke up. They promised me expansion authority. Line. L's response was quiet. You never thought beyond yourself. Section 5. A visit from the mayor of Timber Falls, stopped by the ranch. I didn't know this was happening, he claimed. The HOA's decisions were internal. I offered him coffee. All offered him a folder. Inside, proof of a signature on a zoning bypass signed by his office. He left without finishing his drink. Section 6. Restoring the boundaries, we hired a crew to restore the old ranch boundary markers. Strong posts. New fencing. Steel signs that read private land, entry without. Consent is trespassing under state law. L smiled when the first one went in. Let's see them try now. Section 7. Civic response. The local paper ran a piece titled, "The Lake That Fought Back." Civic Watch sent L a letter of commendation. Former HOA members in other towns reached out anonymously, asking for advice. What started as one illegal camping accusation had become a movement. Section 8. Firelight. Again we camped again by the lake. Same fire, same dock. But this time, no tension. No headlights. Just fireflies, the crackle of flame, and the sound of quiet victory. Elle leaned back on her elbows, watching the stars. It's not over, she said. But this ranch is ours again. I nodded, and it always will be. 3 weeks after restoring the fences, we thought we'd reach the calm. But one morning, I pointed to the far corner of the ranch, the southern edge, where the land met the backwoods. Did you authorize digging out there? She asked. No, I said. No one should be past the ridge. But there they were. 2 men in fluorescent vests, digging near the brush line. A black SUV parked nearby. L and I walked out together. Section 2. Unknown surveyors, wherewith land grid solutions, one of the men said. We were contracted to run exploratory samples on behalf of the Timber Falls Improvement Board. L's voice sharpened. There is no legal improvement board with jurisdiction here. This land is privately owned. They paused, then backed off. Must be a mix-up. But L wasn't buying it. She took photos, plates, equipment tags. They're not here to explore, she said. They're here to appraise. Section 3. Elle digs deeper that night. Elle tore into county records again, and there it was. Recently approved development overlay 1 that included a portion of our ranch listed as under zoning dispute.
How?
Did this get through? I asked. She grimaced, used an old administrative loophole, claimed the boundary line was undefined due to a land merger in 1982, and the kicker. They filed the claim before the court ruling. Section 4. Ghost. Paperwork, we contacted the land office. They had no physical survey, no request for inspection. Just a rubber-stamped parcel code tied to a defunct LLC. L raised an eyebrow. This smells like fraud. 8. We tracked the LLC to a mailbox in Dallas. No owners, just a shell. Someone's trying to sneak in through the back door, Elle said. Let's slam it shut. Section 5. Rallying the locals, we organized a town hall not just for Timber Falls residents, but ranchers, retirees, and homeowners from surrounding counties. L presented the documents. The boundary maps, the phony LLC connections. You think this only affects one lake? She said. They're coming for your barns, your wells, your backyards. The room erupted. Section 6. Whistle from within. A week later, an anonymous envelope showed up in our mailbox. Inside, a letter from a city planning intern. They forged 2 of the signatures that approved the overlay. Attached was a scanned login sheet. 2 names clearly faked. That was the final straw. Section 7. Legal retaliation. Elle filed an injunction with the state Attorney General's office. We worked with a local investigative reporter who broke the story wide open. Private ranch targeted an HOA expansion fraud. News crews camped outside Timber Falls for days. The overlay project was halted pending investigation. Section 8. Fence line vigil. We camped out by the southern fence every night for a week. Just Elle, me, and the sound of coyotes. No more surveyors came. No more SUVs. Just stillness and a new sign we put up by torchlight. This land is guarded by its rightful owners. Section 9. Visitors and vindication. Other landowners started visiting us. Some brought gifts. Others brought files, proof that Timber Falls HOA had tried similar tricks before. Elle began forming a coalition, a legal network of rural landowners willing to defend their lines. She called it groundkeepers. Section 10. A line drawn in stone. You had a stonemason carve a boundary marker where the fence had been challenged. It read McKenna Ranch since 1954. As Elle ran her hand along the cold granite, she whispered, "This isn't just about land. It's about telling people we remember where the lines are." Following the public collapse of the overlay scheme, retaliation came from a new direction quietly, and with gloves on, bank letters arrived, questioning loan terms that had been stable for years. County inspectors appeared unannounced, citing livestock drainage permits. One even attempted to fine us for improper rural signage. Elle knew the tactic. They're laundering power through bureaucracy, she muttered. We beat them in court. Now they want to drown us in forms. Section 2. The audit weapon. A week later, the state tax board notified us that the ranch had been flagged for audit. Not 1, but 3 years' worth of filings. Elle's jaw clenched. That's not random. That's ordered. We gathered every receipt, deed, invoice, and equipment record we had. The burden was absurd, but we knew if we didn't fight, we'd drown. Section 3. The alliance forms. The Groundkeepers Coalition grew. Ranchers from 4 counties joined in, retired judges, former surveyors. One ex-IRS agent named Warren who offered his expertise for free. You're not the only ones they've audited, he said. This is coordinated. State-level intimidation disguised as procedure. Section 4. Elle's counterattack. Elle built a digital wall. She launched an open registry documenting every bureaucratic abuse tied to contested land boundaries. Each case verified with documents. The website went viral. Senator's office reached out. Reporters followed. They titled their feature, "The Rural Red Tape War." Section 5. The night drone. Late one night, a surveillance drone buzzed our western field. Elle tracked its signal to a private security contractor hired by a regional land broker. "We're on a list now," she said, "and it's not short." She filed a formal complaint. then sent our own drone in return. The next morning, their drone didn't come back. Section 6. The sheriff's choice, Sheriff Mendez, finally paid us a visit. He was under pressure calls from state officials, donors, even his own HOA. But he stood on our porch, hat in hand, and said, "I swore to protect this county. Not cover for suits." L nodded. "Then help us draw the real line." He did. Deputies were reassigned. Dumb lawful inspections stopped. Section 7. Returned to Cortel, filed a motion to bar any agency from entering Kenna Ranch without 48 hours. Notice and proof of warrant, or probable cause. The court approved. We posted the order on every gate. Section 8. The broadcast tale. We have a live-streamed talk to rural landowners across the state. She laid out the timeline, the documents, defense strategy. If they can't steal your land in daylight, she said, they'll wear you down in paper. But paper cuts can be traced. And we will trace everyone. Section 9. Dust storm. The wind picked up that weak, dry hot, carrying red dust from the plains. It swept across our ranch like a warning. But this time, we didn't retreat. We stood at the ridge where our fence met open pasture. Elle raised her binoculars. "They're still out there, watching?" I asked. "What do we do next?" She smiled. "We hold the line." Section 10. Written in dust, we carved new boundary stones with names, not just ours. But every neighbor who'd stood up, a line drawn not in pencil, not in paint, but in dust, in blood, in fight, and above it. Elle mounted a sign that read, "We wrote the rules. Now we enforce them." The line we drew in the dust became more than a boundary. It became a call. Over the next 2 weeks, landowners across the state reached out. From cattlemen in the north to beekeepers near the desert edge, stories poured in: phantom zoning rules, surprise audits, quiet land seizures under the cloak of HOA redevelopment plans. Elle began organizing digital town halls, bringing hundreds of people together by video each night. She called it the fence line sessions. "This isn't just one ranch," she said. "It's a map of pressure points. And now we know where they are." Section 2. The Charter of Groundkeeper Sill. Drafted a charter legal framework that every participant could use to challenge land misuse, forced annexations, and bureaucratic suppression. She made it public, free, and defensible. It included a notification requirement for all zoning changes, ITO refusal for HOA encroachments on legacy deeds, transparent oversight of any improvement, claims tied to funding, and most importantly, a code of solidarity. No landowner stands alone again. Section 3. The false accusation days later. A state representative went on public radio and accused Elle of organizing anti-government sentiment with possible extremist ties. The smear was precise. Timed. Elle didn't flinch. They fear what they can't buy. She released her own statement, backed by state constitutional land. Offered to meet the representative in a public forum. He declined. Section 4. Legal muscle joins in that same week. Not. 3 major law firms offered pro bono assistance. 2 former state Supreme Court clerks signed on. A retired judge from El Paso joined the advisory board. Elle's work is airtight, he said, and it terrifies them. Section 5. Digital strike one night. The groundkeeper's website was hacked. The homepage was replaced with a single phrase: "Your fences can't stop progress." Elle and Jade traced the breach to a DC-based lobbying firm linked to land developers. Within 48 hours, they published every digital fingerprint, email logs, server access points, payments to bots that had swarmed the forums. Public outrage exploded. Section 6. The turning point. Then came a video. A 78-year-old farmer from upstate stood at his fence, holding Elle's charter, and said into his phone, "This is the first time. I feel like someone in this country is watching out for folks like me." It went viral. Section 7. The ranch gathering. We hosted the first in-person Groundkeepers Summit at our ranch. Over 200 landowners came. Some brought folding chairs, others casseroles. All brought stories in there. Lines in the sand. Elle stood atop a hay bale and read the names of every landowner who'd joined the cause. When she finished, they stood in silence, in unity. Section 8. New enemies. The coalition had power now. 8. That meant new enemies. Emails from phantom sources, threats, a vandalized truck. False reports to CPS about L's brother's family. They fought dirty, but we fought louder. Section 9. The resolution fillet, whistleblower anonymous, but verified delivered. A file labeled Resolution 66. Inside. Proof that a coalition of HOA leadership councils had drafted a post-2025 expansion strategy. It listed targeted parcels hours among them. They called it the Reclamation Plan. L called it war. Section 10. Standing Talon. The ridge that evening, the sun was gold behind the pines. The new coalition banner flapped beside the McKenna Ranch flag. We stood with neighbors, strangers who'd become family. Elle looked down at the land, then up at the horizon. They wanted us quiet. She said, now we're everywhere. Section 1. The weather turned summer, brought heat waves, dust storms, and silence from Timber Falls City Council. But Elle sensed something different. They're reorganizing, she said one morning. Karen may be gone, but her allies are still there. Quiet doesn't mean harmless. She was right. Within a week, a new land integration committee had formed under a friendly name. But with the same blueprint, they're just changing the banner, Elle growled. The playbook's the same. Section 2. The surprise election out of nowhere. The city announced a special election to modernize land ordinances and unify growth zones. Buried in the ballot, clause to allow HOA committees to request eminent domain hearings. They're trying to legalize the land grab, Elle said. We mobilized. Elle recorded a video. The groundkeepers posted flyers. We held emergency live streams. We read the fine print aloud, word by word. Section 3. Dust and votes in Election Day. People lined up from across the valley. Ranchers, gardeners, veterans, single moms. The clause was voted down by 72%. But they didn't stop. Section 4. Legal sabotage the next morning. Elle's charter was flagged as violating nonprofit lobbying laws. Formal complaint had been filed anonymously. She pulled up the filer's metadata. It traced back to a state HOA board staffer. We're getting close, she said. Close enough they're swinging wild. Section 5. Fires and flashpoints that week. 2 barns in the coalition mysteriously caught fire. Local news buried it as equipment malfunction. But Elle connected the dots. Both ranches were listed in Resolution 66. We upped patrols. Installed thermal drones. Posted signs. Trespassers will be recorded, reported, and resisted. Section 6. Timber Falls erupts. Then came the town hall. A groundkeeper named Alvaro stood during open comments and read the names of every official tied to the illegal land map. Had photos, emails, bank records. Half the room gasped. The other half shouted. Council members tried to shut him down, but it was live streamed. Section 7. The resignations within 72 hours. 3 officials stepped down. 1 fled the state. The HOA Council's acting president deleted her online presence entirely. Elle stayed quiet, but her silence said everything. Section 8. Storm on the horizon. A week later. The first cease and desist letter arrived from a national law group representing multiple real estate developers. They claimed defamation, disruption, and interference with strategic community growth initiatives. Elle drafted her reply. We're not interfering. We're exposing. Section 9. The line holds, despite the lawsuits, the town shifting like a snake and the fires. The coalition never wavered. They marched through Timber Falls with signs made of fence posts. They wore hats with cattle brands instead of logos. They showed up not in anger, but in unity. Section 10. A new sky one evening. After weeks of chaos, a soft rain finally fell over the ranch. Elle stood by the lake in boots and a long coat, her reflection rippling in the muddy water. They've thrown storms, she said, but they forgot we're weatherproof. Chapter 7. The lake stands guard. Section 1. The quiet that warns after the cease and desist letter failed to silence us. There was nothing. No fires, no press statements, no drones. Just eerie quiet. Elle didn't celebrate. This isn't surrender, she said. This is recoil. They're loading something bigger. And she was right. Section 2. A stranger at the water. It started with footprints. Out near the northern bend of the lake. Tracks cut through the reed's boots, not local. Judging by the tread, the next night, a motion sensor near the dock snapped. A photo. A man in a dark jacket standing still, staring at the water. Not paparazzi, Elle muttered. Surveillance. Possibly probing our routines. Section 3. The waterline meeting. We set up a decoy campfire near the dock. That night, just past 2 a.m., he returned. Elle was waiting. The man didn't flinch when she stepped out. You're Elle McKenna, he said. I'm not here to scare you. She said nothing. I work logistics for a firm hired to perform a pre-redevelopment viability assessment. They didn't tell us it was contested land. But once your name came up, Elle interrupted. Then why come back? He hesitated. Because they told us to erase the camera logs. Section 4. The unraveling map. The next morning, Elle took the man's tip and pulled every redevelopment. Proposal tied to Timber Falls and neighboring counties. One name repeated. Lakeside Revival Holdings, LLC, registered in Delaware. Board members hidden. Same firm had appeared in 3 other land theft cases nationwide. Elle compiled everything. Dates, blueprints, LLC, trees. And then we shared it. Section 5. The broadcast that broke the state. Elle live-streamed from the lakeshore. File open behind her, talking through each deception. This isn't one town. It's a model. They call it renewal. But it's conquest with spreadsheets. The stream spread like wildfire. Major journalists picked it up. One whistleblower confirmed that Lakeside Revival was backed by hedge funds targeting undervalued private land. Section 6. The fallout within. 3 days, 4 lawsuits were dropped. 2 senators called for an ethics investigation. The HOA board suspended. All meetings. The tide was finally turning. Section 7. The hidden clause. But Elle kept reading. Deeper in the corporate filings, she found it, a sunset clause. It stated that if Timber Falls didn't achieve developmental designation by fiscal year close, all property within 1,000 feet of the lake would be permanently reclassified. As public utility land, we checked the map that included half the ranch. Section 8. Mobilization. The groundkeepers called for one last push. Hundreds arrived. Tents went up. Generators buzzed. Flags flew. Every inch of shoreline was manned. We called it the Watch by the Water. Section 9. The council cracks under pressure. The Timber Falls City Council was forced to call a public vote to nullify the clause. They tried to delay, block the motion, but on live stream, under the eyes of thousands, the vote passed. Clause repealed, map voided. Ranch secure. Section 10. The lake watches back. We sat at the dock that night, Elle's feet dangling over the water. The lake held its ground, I said. Elle shook her head slowly. No, it did more than that. She looked out into the darkness, where winds skimmed the surface. It stood guard. Chapter 8. Echoes Beyond the Fence. Section 1. The days after the clause was gone. The lake was safe. Timber Falls went quiet again this time, a deeper quiet, the kind that settles after something breaks. But we didn't relax. Elle walked the boundary each morning like clockwork, not out of fear, but out of principle. It's not just about our land anymore, she said. It's about what they think they can still take from someone else. Section 2. Beyond our borders, requests started coming in from neighboring towns. One from Arizona, then Missouri, then Maine. We saw your video, one message read. We didn't know we could say no. Elle began work on a new digital project, CoFensa platform, where landowners could upload their deeds, boundaries, violations, and legal responses. A watchdog with teeth. Section 3. The lawmakers visit Congressman Duval. Once indifferent, now arrived by helicopter. He toured the property, ate stew in our barn, asked about land rights like it was new territory. Elle was direct. We don't want handshakes. We want statutes. Duval promised to co-sponsor a bill, the Landowner Sovereignty Act. Section 4. The data drop Jade. Our digital analyst decrypted a massive cache sent by a former zoning clerk. Inside, a pattern of false reclassifications across 12 counties, same language, same legal tricks, same LLC trees. They've been doing this for a decade, L said. Software and silence. Section 5. National attention. A New York Times headline read, "How a Ranch Defied a Billion-Dollar Land Engine." Documentaries reached out. State attorneys general began audits. Public pressure grew, but Elle avoided the spotlight. She stayed. At the lake, watching the tree line. Section 6. Counterplaython. Came the lawsuits from legacy media. Development firms. Even an anonymous nonprofit claiming defamation. L handled each one. The same way with receipts, with TIMS, TAMP, with names. Settled. Every time. Section 7. Fire at the edge one night. Controlled burn outside Timber Falls jumped its fire break. 2 groundkeeper farms were scorched. No lives lost, but it was a message. Dodo didn't flinch. She rebuilt the fencing herself. Didn't sleep until the last post was set. They'll try to scare us off the land, she said. But we were raised by it. Section 8. A new charter at a midnight summit beside the lake. Elle read aloud the first draft of the National Land Defense Charter. It included mandatory local landowner review panels, public documentation of all HOA planned, redevelopment screen liability for forged zoning claims protection, status for generational properties. They all signed it. Section 9. The fence gets taller physically. Nothing changed. But the boundary now held weight, not just of law, but of community. People no longer passed the line unaware. They stopped. They acknowledged. L said, "We don't guard the fence with guns. We guard it with history." Section 10. The lake. One morning, I found Elle alone by the water, writing in her field notebook. She looked up. "Do you hear it?" "Hear what?" I asked. "The silence," she said. "It's different now. It's listening back." I sat beside her, not to answer, but to listen. 2. Chapter 9. The Reckoning Ridge. Section 1. The fault line forms a month after EchoFence launched. The system detected a surge in land grabs from 6 different states, more than we'd ever seen. L didn't panic. She mapped them. Patterns emerged. It's all traced back to a central node, a lobbying syndicate calling itself Green Line West. "They're not hiding anymore," she said, "which means they think they can't be stopped." Section 2. The informant's arrival. A courier left a package at our gate. No note, no return address. It's inside. A flash drive with internal memos, investor presentations, and security briefings from Green Line West. One document detailed a classified acquisition plan. Target Ridge. 27 strategic bluff for water capture. Asset. McKenna Ranch. "They renamed us an asset," I said. Elle stared at the file. "Then let's make them regret the purchase order." Section 3. The first strike. Elle filed injunctions across 3 counties where Green Line was exposed. But she didn't stop there. She leaked the memos to watchdog reporters, who in turn traced the syndicate's funding to defense contractors and venture groups. Public fury followed. Section 4. Ridge 27, Rises We, renamed our southern bluff Reckoning. Ridge and turned it into a vigil point. A signal fire burned every night. Drones swept hourly. Groundkeepers took shifts around the perimeter, and people came. Old landowners, young families, veterans, poets. They camped in unity. Section 5. The Hearing. Green Line's legal team filed for a private arbitration session to push forward their claim. Elle challenged it live on record. "This is not arbitration," she said. "This is attempted annexation by suit." She presented land titles going back 100 years, proving uninterrupted private ownership. The judge ruled in our favor. Section 6. Media siege. News vans blanketed Timber Falls. Elle avoided interviews, but gave one message. You're not just watching a ranch. You're watching the last firewall between people and paper tyrants. Her words spread. Section 7. Cyber ambush. Green Line retaliated with a cyber campaign. False background reports on Elle. KI-generated videos of staged confessions, attempts to discredit echofence.l, fired back with verified server trails, showing their edits and tapes. It backfired spectacularly. Section 8. The Unity Wall at Reckoning Ridge. A long wall of cedar posts was built, each post carved with a landowner's initials. Over 1,000 posts by month's end. One night, it rained, but people stayed. They lit candles in the storm. Section 9. Collapse in consequence. Whistleblower from within Greenline testified under oath. The syndicate had forged 38 separate zoning approvals and funneled bribes to local boards. 3 arrests were made. 2 resignations. Congressional hearing was announced. Elle didn't celebrate. She just stood at the fence and nodded. Section 10. The ridge holds in the morning mist. Reckoning Ridge stood unchanged. No bulldozers, no men in suits, no drones. Just prairie wind and the steady hum of a land that refused to forget its name. Whispered, they pushed to the edge, and we made the edge our home. Asterisk Chapter 10. The Last Boundary, Section 1. Morning at the edge, the air was still at Reckoning Ridge. No wind. No birds. Just silence that stretched over the hills like a sheet. Elle stood beside the flagpole, watching the sun rise as if waiting for the next move. But the move wouldn't come from outside. It would come from us. This isn't about pushing back anymore, she said. It's about building forward. Section 2. Turning defense into doctrine, the National Land Defense Charter passed into federal review. Over 300,000 signatures endorsed it. Senator Duvall, once neutral, had become its most vocal sponsor. Elle was invited to testify before Congress. She declined. I don't speak for all of us, she said. I just opened the gate. Instead, she appointed 3 other groundkeepers, 1 from each coast, and 1 from a Midwest reservation, who read her statement. This is not about ownership. It's about guardianship. Land is not a trophy, it is a trust. Section 3. Legacy under attack. One last attempt came. Greenline Nunder, a new name. Novacor Ruru offered to buy McKenna Ranch for $27.4 million. We laughed. Then Elle got quiet. They think if they raise the price high enough, we'll sell out the fight. She printed their letter and nailed it to the Unity wall. Section 4. The return of Karen out of nowhere. Karen Blevins returned to Timber Falls. A reporter caught her at the city library. When asked what she thought of Elle's movement, she replied she was just lucky. She had the time and the money to make a scene. Elle's response? She published a detailed breakdown of every bill, court fee and out-of-pocket costs covered by rural donations. Nothing. No luck. Just grit. Section 5. Boundary of memory. We hosted a memorial at the lake for every landowner who passed during the fight. Photos, boots, flags. Elle read their names aloud. Took an hour. Then she placed a stone in the water with the carved phrase, "The land remembers who stood." Section 6. Reckoning becomes ritual each year on the day the court overturned the final zoning clause. The groundkeepers returned to the ridge. No speeches. No broadcasts, just presence. They walk the fence, sit by the fire, touch the posts, and remember. Section 7. Elle's legacy. Elle refused every award. She gave every dime, from book deals to fund legal clinics for rural communities. When asked why she never ran for office, she smiled. I already built something that lasts longer than votes. Section 8. My final campfire. Years later, I returned to the lake alone. The dock was older, but still solid. The trees taller. The silence deeper. I lit a fire, sipped from the old thermos, and thought of her. Section 9. Across the fence just before midnight, I heard a sound, a distant voice, not threatening, not close. Just someone on the other side of the line, whispering thanks. A new landowner, a young one. They were there because we held the line. Section 10. The last boundary. The next morning, I placed the final marker beside the lake. It read, "This land was once challenged. Now, EFT challenges all who follow. As I stepped back, I whispered, "They never knew what they were trespassing into."